Thank you.
So I usually just try to start with a question that has nothing to do with anything. So I was just going to ask, if you could have dinner, lunch, drinks with anybody from history, who would it be and why?
I think it's hard to choose between the two, but James Baldwin or Toni Morrison. Probably Toni Morrison because she's my favorite writer. And I think that she would have just a lot of chisme, a lot of just juicy bits of the literary world. And I think she would really enjoy the dinner and have a lot to say about current events. So yeah, her. I dream
Awesome.
about her actually sometimes. So I feel like she's with me in some ways.
That's awesome. What a good answer.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right, cool. Well, we will jump right in. Our first question is coming from, and if you guys, you'll have to unmute yourselves. If you could just say your name and where you're at. So our first question is from Lydia Garza.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm from Chicago also, just so you know, and I'm still here. So mine is actually a two-part question. The first one is, why did you include these particular stories as a group? And was there a theme that you wanted to convey by having these put together?
Yeah. So, as I was writing this book, it was me sort of tackling subjects that I felt were really important to me. And so they, manifested as essays, and I didn't think of it as a memoir until my publisher suggested it. And I was like, oh, sure. Like I guess the genre wasn't that much of a concern for me. And also, in a way, there was a narrative arc, and it was a story of someone trying to become the person they feel they should be. And so it each story is or each essay is an instance in which I am trying my very best and often failing terribly, but to have the life that I want, to be the person that I need to be in the world. And so I think that's the thread, and there are other threads like mental illness and sexuality and spirituality and things like that, but that's essentially why I chose to ultimately call it a memoir, because it did have that sort of arc. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Good question. Thank you, Lydia. And next up, we have Mr. Ray Rodriguez. I know you're in there, sir. I saw you a second ago.
You're on mute. Ray,
yeah, I'm right here.
There you go.
Yeah, Erika, thank you so much. I appreciated so much what you wrote and how you wrote it, and just your honesty and your vulnerability.
Thank you.
So we just felt really grateful, that you're here, and that you were so open, because I think you're doing such good deeds for so many other people as well, just opening up like that. So we just wanted to thank you. And then, knowing what you know, I have kind of two questions. Knowing what you know now, would you have treated your mental health differently? Or what lessons have you learned regarding your mental health? That's kind of the first question. And then the other one was just, you mentioned Sor Juana a lot and now I believe you have the Sor Juana chair at the Paul.
I did. Past tense.
Oh no. Okay.
I'll get to that if you'd like.
Yeah. So I'm just really curious about what you feel her relevancy is in today's feminism, and what have you learned from her life and her writings? It's kind of a two-part question.
Okay. I'm going to have you repeat this second question once I finish the first, because my attention span is not the best.
No worries.
And please remind me of the first as well.
Yeah, the first one is really the way you treated your mental health.
Oh, yes.
How how would you do it differently, or
Yeah.
and what lessons have you learned from your mental health journey?
I mean, I feel that the journey that I had and the struggles that I had led me to become who I am right now. And so I always hesitate to say that I would go back in time and do this, that, or the other, because sure, all of those things were really hard, but now I'm me and I like who I am. And so it's a very philosophical question. And it's interesting. And sometimes I do think about going back in time and talking to my younger self and things like that. And I guess in those moments I mostly comfort my younger self and tell her that things will be okay. But as far as my mental health, I mean, yes, it would have been ideal to have better treatment, to know more, to have an accurate diagnosis. But I think this story of my mental illness and navigating all of these different challenges in getting help and care and in healing, it's very representative of what so many people go through. And I've been so privileged also to have access to mental health care and to medication. And I've had insurance. I've been without insurance also throughout my life, which is really frustrating as a person who struggles with mental health. And so like I feel like I've navigated those waters in some ways to maybe make the path a little easier for other people in that same position, to understand, for other people to see that what they're going through isn't something that is singular, that is something that many of us go through, that just it's hard to be human, it's hard to be alive in many different ways. And so yeah, I hope that just with my work I'm able to provide the healing that I was seeking as I was growing up. I wanted to find people like me and understand myself better, and I didn't really have access to that. So yes, second part of your question.
I get the second one was mainly you mentioned Sor Juana, and I'm just curious as to she's such an important figure in Mexican history, and what you gained from her in terms and her relevancy in feminism at the moment, and what you learned from her life and her writings.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I did have the Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz chair at DePaul University. And as a result of budget cuts, they did not renew my contract. And so there have been articles written about it, and it was like this public thing, and it was very frustrating and just demoralizing at times. But anyway, it was, if you want to know more about it, just please Google it. Because there is more to the story. I just don't want to take forever answering this question. But anyway, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz is a figure that I always, since I understood what her life was about, she was someone that really, really intrigued me, because she stopped at nothing to get an education. Like she, wanted to pretend to be a man to go to school, and She joined the convent because that was the only option she had to be able to study. And that kind of desire, that kind of drive, I just really empathize with, because I have felt that, and I feel like in some ways it's like my ancestors trying to say so many different things through me. And I wonder if that's what it was for her as well. Like this desire that is so immense that it can't be stopped. And I wish so many times in my life that I didn't want to be a writer, that I didn't think about the things that I thought about, because it made my life so much more complicated. And because for a woman, for a young woman, for a brown woman, that's not something that you're really encouraged to do. Like, who's ever done that besides Sandra Cisneros, and tell your Mexican parents that you're going to be a poet when you grow up. Like, it's just kind of nuts. And so I love how she just insisted upon becoming a learned person, a woman who read and who wrote and who had all these like rhetorical battles with people. Like, I just think that's so cool. And so I relate very much to that. And I actually named my daughter Sojourner Inés after Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. So, because I wanted to give her, a path with her name. And so I think in terms of feminism today, I think a lot of Chicanas, Latina writers like me have been heavily influenced by her still, because the writers that we love have been influenced by her, and so she was such a force, and she continues to be relevant, which is incredible. And I was very honored to be the chair at DePaul, the Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz chair, specifically because of all of those reasons, because I loved who she was and what she represented. And so, yeah, that's my very long-winded answer.
Awesome.
Not at all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's fabulous.
I have a Sor Juana question. I don't know if you want to go out of order or not, but
Oh, you might as well. Yeah, you were going to be like fifth, or go for it. Please do.
thank you. Yeah, I was very touched that you had such a strong connection with Sor Juana, and I wanted to know how old you were when you discovered her, because I discovered her in college back in the early, like in 1970, through a Chicano professor. And I was just amazed that a woman that intellectually and advanced and driven, as you said, existed in that time period. And because at the time the beginnings of the Chicana movement, there wasn't a lot of writings to inspire young Chicanas in their, life path development, so, and the book that I keep it by my bed, I don't read it all the time, but the book of the letters that she had with that bishop were just incredible.
I haven't read those. I need to read
Oh,
that.
they blew my mind. It's just amazing how she talks like a feminist today, but in their language style, and I've read them both English and
Yeah.
Spanish, and they're just freaking phenomenal. So how old were you when you discovered her?
I was also in college. I read her in a literature class, and like that really struck me. And then I think I forgot about her, and then like she came back into my life, and I realized how amazing she was. And there was this show on Netflix. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It was really fun, and I thought it was really good, but it was very much in the style of telenovelas, and it was about her life. And I told my mom to watch it, and then she told me she reminds me of you. And that was like one of the first times I've ever felt like really seen by my mother. I was like, oh shit. And so yeah, that was another moment that was very significant for me. but yeah, I forgot the name of the show. I'm so sorry. It was
I can find it, but I just want to comment that, and I should have done it with other Chicana writers in the past, and it didn't hit me to now that the Sor Juana thing came up, is that how grateful I am to still be alive, because I'm going to be 71 next month, to still be alive and have so many Chicana writers to read. You
That's
know, I
awesome.
wish that some of us older ones that, I mean, there's been a few, and we had one that we had a discussion with, which was nice because I could relate to her more because she grew up at the same time I did. But to have you all contributing and being immortalized through your work is just huge. It's as huge as Sor Juana. So
Thank
had to put that in for
you.
you.
That means a lot.
Inez is the name of the show.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Lydia.
You're
I
welcome.
might
Yeah.
have to rewatch it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the question, Judy. And she's up in Montana. So that's. I just wanted to comment. You were talking about, just like healthcare. How have these conversations about people not having healthcare, not having the ability to connect with doctors and mental health professionals. It's so crazy. Only in America, right?
Well, in a lot of
So,
places.
right. But a place like this we shouldn't even have
Right. No, I totally get it. It's embarrassing.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Next question is coming from Lupe Holguin.
And I'm from Fresno, California. Hey,
Hi.
how you doing? I have a couple of questions. I put two of them together. Oh, so the first one is, what was the positive and negative about writing your book?
Okay. Well, let's start with the negative, I guess. I think there really isn't much negative from writing the book. I mean, at times I feel like a little exposed in not in a way where I'm ashamed of what I've done or who I am, but in a way where like people sometimes feel like they have a lot of access to me because of the way that I write. And so that to me sometimes it overwhelms me and I don't know how to handle it. Or I do, but it just makes me feel bad. And so that's the only, and it doesn't happen a lot, but I've had some very like uncomfortable moments because it's like I think I write like the reader is my friend, and I think that when people receive it in that way, it's really beautiful. But then sometimes that transfers into my actual life, and that's not what I'm trying to do, like I'm trying to write these books while still maintaining a sense of privacy, a sense of I don't know, just a sense of self. And as far as like what good has come from it, I think for the most part is that people connect to it so deeply, and so there's like that double-edged sword where I love that. I think that is really beautiful, and I'm grateful for all the beautiful things people say about the book, and I feel really honored to hold that place in someone's life. And some people have said to me, and it's hard for me to even say it out loud, but they've said that the book has saved their life. And like I never thought that would ever happen. It's not something that I considered. And so for someone to say that to me, I feel just very, very grateful. But yeah, it's hard when you talk about your innermost moments and all of your feelings and you're very familiar on the page, and then there's just like it's different. The speaker and the author are not exactly the same. Yeah. And so, yeah, anyway, but I'm so happy that people have been moved and changed and all of that. And I try to be grateful every single day, honestly, about my life and about how people have received my work.
Well, piggybacking on that, do you feel that you've succeeded in reaching the audience or the readers that you were striving to, get to?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I want it to have a bigger reach always and grow as the years go by. And, A Crying in the Bathroom has been optioned for TV. And so hopefully that becomes something that people connect to as well. And so, yeah, I'm very happy with how everything has turned out for me. But yeah, it's still very surreal because I never imagined that it could be like this. I just didn't even conceive of it. And now it's just it feels really big. And I have to always kind of like think about that and what that means and like what my work means to people and like the responsibility of it all. Yeah, it's just a lot to consider.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Even as you're answering the question, I'm thinking the exact same thing. Like, wow, this is a lot on her shoulders. Like she's like the symbol for feminism, the symbol for Latinas, the symbol for writers, and like you got a lot to live up to, I guess. That's
Yeah. Yeah, which is beautiful, and I love the fact that I have these things to live up to. That's cool. I also just like fear that people. I don't want to disappoint. Like I don't want. I don't know, but at the same time, I have to be true to myself and like what my work is about. And yeah, the thing is that I always write with my community in mind. Like that is really what keeps me centered. And I don't have like a specific person in mind, but this next prose book that I'm working on is fiction, and it's for our mothers. It's for the señora, in our lives. And so I'm trying to reach all the different generations, and I hope that I'm able to deliver something that's authentic. And for that reason, I've been interviewing a lot of women about their experiences as mothers and immigrants. And so, yeah, I just want people also to know that I'm very prone to making mistakes and like saying perhaps the wrong thing. I don't know. I think I just maybe that comes off in my work though. That I am a very flawed person, just trying to do my best.
That's all we can do. And I think that's probably what people love. She's authentic. That's what we've said in a lot of these meetings. She's authentic. She's bold. So
She's human.
awesome. Well, our next question is coming from Claudia Flores. I saw a Claudia on. I'm not sure if it's Flores.
Yes.
There you go. Oh, I think you muted yourself again.
Can you hear me?
There you
Thank you.
go. Yes.
Thank you, Erika, and the group. It's nice to be able to ask these questions and have these conversations. my question is, when did you decide to publish your writing, and can you talk about your greatest lesson in this journey?
You know what? I found an old journal where I was determined to publish something by the time I was 18. And looking back on it, I'm just like, what was I thinking? How did I have the audacity to think that I would have enough to write about at the age of 18? And so I've always wanted to publish books. I've always known it, and I've been perhaps a little too eager to do it because I've really just was able to work my way, claw my way up in some ways, and that was through reaching out to different people, networking, writing introduction letters. Like I've done it all. Or I've applied to everything. I mean, I always knew in my heart that I was a writer, and that I wanted to write books. And so I just had the Mexican work ethic to be able to somehow figure it out and do it. And I really didn't let up at any time. I got many rejections, but I just knew that this was what I was meant to do. So I kept doing it, crying about it a lot, and then just continuing on. But yeah, ever since I was a kid, I just knew that this was what I was meant to be.
Awesome. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you so much for that question. The next question, he wanted me to wait to the end, but this is funny and I really want to know the answer. So Richard Gonzalez, it's all you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and
Sure.
and I wanted to thank you personally for being so open and so honest about your struggles with mental health. And it really hit home with me because in our family that we've got a history of struggles, mental health struggles, and so reading it from your perspective, I guess it gave me some understanding of what others in my family have struggled with, and I hope it's given me, some insight, some empathy to what they've gone through and what they're struggling with and what they have struggled with in the past. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you were able to feel that way, through reading the book. That means a lot.
Yes, it really did hit me. So thank you. But now on to the chisme, because you talked about meeting with Toni Morrison and getting all the chisme from her. So you were talking about in the book about the night that the play adaptation of I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, when that opened in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And you said you laughed, you cried, and you yelled at two white ladies.
I knew you were going to ask about that.
So now I think we're all waiting to hear the story on that.
All right. Okay. That's a good question. I like how specific it is. And so that night was very emotional for me. Obviously, like, my book was being turned into this amazing play. And so I had all of these feelings, and I watched it with my then boyfriend, now husband, and I shed many tears. And it was just like my family was there. It was such a beautiful experience. And the play, of course, was like amazing. And so afterwards, my husband and I got into the elevator, and there was this old white lady muttering about the play. I forgot exactly what she said, but she didn't like it, right? And so I just like held it in because, you know, I didn't want to like yell at an old lady in an elevator. So then we got outside, and then I heard another white lady complaining about the play. And so then I started to get very heated because, you know, I'm all vulnerable and shit, you know, like my life was just put on a stage, and it just, oh my God. And then I kept, I like interrupted, and then I was like pressing her on like, so why was it weird? Like, what was weird about it? You know, and like I just kept going. And then I don't know, at some point we ended up arguing, and I yelled at her quite a bit. And then, as it turns out, this is my husband's favorite part of this story, where we're walking away to the cab, and then one of the other ladies is like, no, wait, we watched Bug. That was another play that was playing the same night. She wasn't talking about my play, but I thought she was. But either way, she was an asshole, and she was very condescending to me. And so my husband just like burst out laughing once he heard that, and he never lets me forget it. So now you know this super embarrassing story, but also kind of funny, and also she deserved it for being such an asshole. I hope it's as good as you thought.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
My cup is full. My cup is full. Nice. Our next question is coming from Tanya Tovar.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi.
Hi, Miss Sanchez. It's so nice to talk to you. I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not that far, but it's far enough, I think. Thank you
It
so
seems
much.
exotic to me. I've never been.
You should come. You should definitely come.
I
We have a
will.
very strong multicultural community up here.
Oh,
So.
nice.
So thank you so much for writing your memoir. I read it in one sitting. It's just, your voice is so clear and so relatable to me. So thank you for that. My interest is in the mothering role. I was thinking about the matrilineal line in your family, and specifically your relationships with your grandmothers, your mother, and now you're a mother to Sojourner. I'm just thinking like how in the fact that your life is almost not completely, but almost like a going against conservative values of the patriarchy and the capitalist system that defined the immigrant experience for the women in your family. How do you approach mothering in light of everything that's happened to you? And do you feel like the women in your life, and maybe some of the senoras that you're interviewing, they are impacting how you approach that with your daughter?
Oh my God. These are questions that I've been asking myself. Thank you for posing that. It's really complicated because in my family, like the mother-daughter relationships have mostly been quite fraught for, I think, many different reasons. One being like poverty and gender limitations and just trauma. And so my grandmother, I don't know everything that she's been through, for instance, my mom's mom, but I know that she suffered a great deal. And my mom also did. And a lot of it was passed down from her mother. And so, and when it comes to me, I've always been very, what's the word? I've always been very rebellious, and I've always questioned like why things were the way they were. And I didn't like how things were so uneven between men and women, and I didn't like the way men treated me, and so like I had this sort of awareness. I think through books I started to really understand what sexism was, what misogyny was. So it was that access to education that allowed me to then forge a different path and see the world in a different way and be in the world in ways that my mom didn't really understand, and my grandmother less so. And so I think there's been a lot of trauma passed down. There's also been love, like I can't like deny that, but I think the circumstances in which the women in my line have lived have made it so they couldn't have a life of their own. They couldn't make choices for themselves. And I am the first who's had the option to do so. And so that creates a lot of friction between me and my mother, because she's from a completely different mindset. She grew up in a rural place where she didn't even know what money was until she was like 8 years old. And so it's a completely different world, and it intimidates her sometimes, and I understand that, and it makes me feel all sorts of ways also that I can't connect with my mother, because we are at odds over like how my daughter should be, you know, in the world, and the things that are important to me versus the things that are important to her. And so it creates conflict. And I think a lot of women like me go through this, because we're trying to, you know, break these cycles. We're trying to like get past the generational trauma and do things differently. And it's hard because you know, like my mom hasn't read all those books that I've read, and she hasn't been influenced in the ways that I've been influenced. And so like we do still belong in very different worlds. And as much as she tries to, I think, understand me, I'm still kind of foreign. I'm an alien. And so with my daughter, I just want her to be happy. I want her to be comfortable. I want her to, you know, have choices and be herself. And, you know, I was just thinking about how everyone was wondering why I didn't pierce her ears. And that was a weird thing for people in the family, that I chose not to do that. And for me, it's like, I want her to have that choice, but they don't see it in that way. And so it's just like, sometimes it's not worth explaining because I'm like, you're not gonna like my answer. But yeah, I think about these questions a lot. And I think about how honestly, my main goal is for my daughter to be healthy and happy. And I can't let tradition interfere. I can't let people's opinions interfere. I am going to do what I think is best for her to feel like in charge of her own life, in charge of her own body, and not afraid to challenge the world when it's unfair. It's something that I'm really trying to instill in her, even though she's only 2.5.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. That was a great question. I feel like we're getting more like the rest of your last chapter with everything you just said. That's awesome. All right, that was Tanya. We have Cynthia Villanueva.
Hi. It's kind of it kind of works my question with what you were just mentioning. So I was wondering, what are your favorite books to read with your children? And also, what books are you looking forward to read with your daughter as she gets older?
Oh man. She loves reading with me. She actually prefers it to reading with her dad. I'm just saying. She always wants to do it with me. our reading time is very special. It's our like nighttime routine, and I actually read her poems from just poetry books that I love, and like I was reading her poems from Rigoberto Gonzalez's new and selected book that came out not too long ago. I read haiku to her. I read Elizabeth Bishop, and she now requests poems, which I can't believe, and it makes me very, very happy. And so she loves like the rhythm, I think, of the poetry. And I also really love reading the children's book Life Doesn't Frighten Me. And that one, I mean, is a classic. Maya Angelou, Basquiat. She loves Basquiat now, so that's pretty sweet. I love that she has taste, in art. And what other books have I been reading to her? Sometimes she wants me to read her like the stupidest book that I don't want to read. It's just so frustrating. I'm like, no, not that one. But whatever. She loves reading. That's really the point. But yeah, there are others. I just can't think of them all because that's what happens to me when people ask me that question. So sorry.
No, that was great. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right, Iris Chavarria Sosa.
Hola, thank
think I
you
saw
so
you.
much, Erika, for being here with us and answering all these very personal questions.
Sure.
My question, with a lot of immigrant women, we seem to make a jump from our mothers' lives into our own very privileged life in some way.
Yeah.
And just curious, do you ever feel guilty? I know this is loaded, and just listen. Do you ever feel guilty for the luxury of being you and mom not being who she is, who she could have been? You talk a lot about that in your book, and you made this huge leap. And my second part of the question is, and you've been answering a lot of it, is you now live in two worlds, economically. How do you move in those spaces as well? So the mom question first.
No, I mean, I think so much about how different our lives are and the choices that I've been able to make simply because I was born here and grew up here. And it's something that has made me feel guilty. I try not to see it in that way necessarily, as like I'm here living this great life and she never had a chance to like go to school or whatever. I try very much to share the success with my family in different ways, and I want them to be a part of it and to know that this isn't it's not like a solitary thing. Like the reason that I've been able to do all of these things is because of my ancestors, because of them, because of my community. It's I've been thinking a lot about the concept of non-self, and that's from Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, where you don't see yourself as like an individual necessarily. Like you are a composite of so many different things and people, and a continuation of your parents in some ways, and your ancestors, and etc. And so I try to approach it in that way, because guilt is not very useful, and I have felt guilt most of my life because of who I was and how I chose to live, and how I disappointed my parents and all of these things. And now that I've gotten to a place where I'm safe, I don't want to feel that guilt anymore, you know, because I made myself a home. I made myself an environment where I'm loved, and I get to work on the things that I think are important, and I have choices, flexibility, and I get to travel, and like that was earned. Like I fought so hard for all of those things, and so um I'm trying to let go of that, because it doesn't serve my mother either, if I feel guilty. Like if I share what I have in some ways, you know, my house is where everyone comes and everyone's welcome all the time, and you know, I'm always providing food and just a place for people to be comfortable and happy. And so I feel like that's one way that I'm like sharing with my family, and just my loved ones in general, with this beautiful house that I have. Like I can't believe that I have it, and so I want everyone to come visit me, because who would have thought? You know, like it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the guilt becomes more compassion.
Yeah. Like how can, instead of feeling guilty about it, how can I like just share, you know?
And forgive. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Robert, I think you're muted.
Am I muted?
Robert.
Yeah, I don't know if I got a message that I'm now the host.
Oh,
So I don't know
Is that
if
better?
There
Yeah.
we now we hear you, Robert.
okay,
So
go for it.
yeah, it keeps cutting out. So Ray, I did make you the host, just in case it cuts me out all the way.
No
But
worries.
I know we had a question in the chat. If you wanted to ask your question now, feel free.
I'd love to ask a question.
Yes, please do.
Is that okay? Okay. Hi, Erika. I am Elena from Monterrey, Mexico.
Hi.
And hi, thank you so much for being so generous and sharing this space with us. I've been listening to all you said, and I was wondering if you have any advice for coping after creating, with all the afflictive emotions that come after being a creator, and also in the very specific moment that you're at when people might be idealizing you, and that also puts you in a very thin line of almost no mistake. Yeah, and I would love to hear that from you. I wrote a book years ago, as a memoir of leadership. I did a documentary, but what happened afterwards, I felt like a deep hangover that I just almost wish I didn't do it. And my creative energy is still there, but I just like, okay, don't come out, because it's not safe. It's not, please don't be afterwards. So if you have any mentoring advice for how to cope with the aftermath emotions, specifically the afflictive emotions after.
Yeah. I think it's important to understand, and it took me a long time to understand that, like, creating it and being artistic, expressing yourself, that's human. Like, that's not something you can really suppress, and if you suppress it, you're gonna really suffer. And it, like, this is how you are built. And I think for a long time I was, well, not always, but there were moments where I was mad at the fact that, like why do I have to do this? Like I why can't I just do something else and be happy? And I realized, like, that's just not how I'm built. I can't do that. And so if that's who you are, if your ancestors are trying to speak through you, because that's how it feels sometimes for me, like all of these women who didn't have that were not allowed to, you know, voice their feelings, their thoughts. Like now I can do that, and it's safe, and I you know, I don't have to like worry about my husband, you know, being abusive or whatever. Like I have all of these images of like what my ancestors must have gone through, and all the ones who repressed their creative side because they didn't know what else to do. There was no way to manifest that in real life, in your outside life, I mean. And so it's important. Like making art is so crucial and important to a culture, and I think that this country doesn't value its artists the way it should. Our society just doesn't see how important it is to be artistic until it makes you money, you know, until it's like, oh, well, you know, this could turn into something very lucrative. Otherwise, it's like, oh, that's frivolous, that's pointless. What are you doing with your life? And I think what you need to do is just, you know, do it despite all of the voices that you have telling you to stop. You're gonna do it anyway, because that's who you are and that's what you need to do. And I think so many women have never even had the chance at all to do something like we can do here. And I always feel like that keeps me going, that emboldens me, because it's not just me. Again, it's not me. It's like all the people before me as well. And I think that that's really a powerful way to shift your perspective.
Thank you so much. That was very powerful.
Awesome. I know we like to keep it right around the 1 hour. Is like maybe 1 or 2 questions okay? And can you hear me?
You are heard,
Uh-oh.
Robert.
Okay, cool.
And I just let somebody in too.
Awesome. I was just gonna ask, this one, my question was, how do your politics lead your writing? Maybe not necessarily lead them, but how do you feel obligated to kind of be political or make political statements through your writing now that you have such a platform?
No, I don't think of it in that way. I think of it as writing what feels really important to me, and it's not. I don't see it as political, but as a matter of ethics and morality, and like how we're treating each other. And you know, there's a lot of migrants here that have been bused from Texas, and I keep like just wondering, like, how are we going to handle this as a city? And like, are we doing enough? No, absolutely not. It's about, like, it's not political. I mean, you could call it that, but it's like these people need homes, they need a place to be safe, and they need work, they need clothes, they need supplies, you know, all of these things. So for me, it's like I write about what really gnaws at me spiritually, and oftentimes that has to do with the way that we treat each other on this planet. And people, I suppose, can read it as political, but for me, it's like it's humanism. It's something that goes beyond all of that. It's like, what are we actually doing to each other? And I don't feel obligated to write about anything something in particular because I'm always writing about things that feel very, very urgent to me. And, you know, if people want me to make a statement on Twitter or whatever it's called now, or, you know, like Instagram about some event, like I'm not going to do that. That's just not how I want to use my time and my effort, my resources. And so I think we get into this like weird trap where we like feel like we need to comment on everything all the time, and I sometimes I need to sit with something and hold it and feel it, and I can't just like write a post, you know, like it's too much. But that's not really what you asked, but anyway, that's something that I've been thinking about.
Awesome, thank you. Well, do we have any maybe last questions from the chat before we call it?
I had one question just about humor. You wrote that whole chapter on humor, and I thought it was just so spot on.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you could, and it sounds like it's part of your character and your like what humor are you going to bring out in your next book? Like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of humor whenever you're talking about it.
I am, and let me tell you, the Senora humor and Senora shade is so great, and it has not been represented, I don't think, well enough in any sort of art or medium. And so I am determined to really capture how funny like our mothers are, and our tias, and like the cruel things that they say, and the you know, wordplay and all of that, like that's what I'm after in this next book.
I immediately think of Sandra Cisneros' Caramelo. And is
Yeah.
it like the wicked grandmother or the something
yeah.
grandmother? I'm like, that voice needs to be out there more. That's hilarious.
There's a lot of those because they were treated very poorly in their lives. So now they're mean old grandmas.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I had some difficulties. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, everyone, for your questions, showing up. We had like 40, 50 people. It was awesome.
Nice.
Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you listening to my rambles.
It was amazing. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
It was
much.
Great.
Thank you very
so
much.
much.
Have a good night.
All right. You guys have a good night. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.